technology industry for a while now and gone through several shifts in the industry as well, right? So as we've progressed in the technology domain, we've moved from a traditional what do you call a software, hardware-led IT industry to now what is being led by technologies such as cloud, AI, data, so on and so forth. So staying technical for women sometimes is challenging, I would say.
Why would you say that?
Because, and I would say it's an advantage at the same time, right? You tend to gravitate towards more of operational roles, more of, in a sense, managerial roles, where you feel that it's easier to handle and there is less on your plate. But I would really say that it's the other way around, right? Because if you're in the technology space, skills is a major currency that you have, right? So you really can differentiate and grow if you really have deep technical skills. And there is definitely a dearth of having good women leaders in the technology space per se. And the limit is endless, thanks to a lot of the, the avenues that are available today, right? So nothing is stopping you from learning something new, even say contributing to a community, contributing to open source, for example, right? So there are a lot of women who are very actively contributing to open source. So there are no barriers, right? There are no gender barriers there are no barriers in terms of you can work from pretty much anywhere, and you really don't need to stick to a certain, the archaic guidelines of, corporate jobs there. So I would say women who focus on technology choose that as a path, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a developer, there is a lot that you can really unleash from an innovation standpoint, and a lot of avenue to grow as a leader, and also as you grow, bring up several others along with you, right? That's also important. So from a challenge standpoint, I think focusing on technology is definitely an advantage rather than a disadvantage.
And
my answer to that is, see, the world is moving towards open technologies, open source, open infrastructure, so on and so forth, right? So there's no way that you could, hold on to something for too long, right? There's no more proprietary as a verbiage, right, in our industry. What we do with the communities, right? So be it developers, be it startups, right? We really are here to help them learn, embrace some of the newer technologies. So you mentioned what we are doing next week, right? So we are doing an entire day worth of developer engagement. We call it the IBM Code Day, which is all about building applications, unleashing your code around core areas such as data science, AI, blockchain, cloud computing, containers, serverless, so on and so forth. So developers have a lot to learn in terms of just embracing these technologies, right? Not everything is intuitive enough. Of course, there's a lot of content out there, right? But what our attempt is to really make it easy and palatable by giving them easy to use patterns, right? So we call them code patterns. So we released close to 100 different code patterns, right, from IBM, and a lot of them are, again, going back to my earlier point, are built on open source technologies, right? So while some of the examples can be hosted on an IBM platform, may use an IBM API, it's also about what are those interesting use cases, interesting scenarios that you can develop, right, using a pattern. And it's very well packaged, where you have the code, where you have the how-to material, you have the content, and you build it on top of that, and you customize it for your requirement, for your customers, so on and so forth. So that is a big shift I think we've really embarked on in terms of arming the developer, right, with the code, with the content, as well as helping them engage in the community. So the developer advocates we have at IBM, they're on a given day, they're either participating in a meetup, or you can see them at a developer event, or they're working with a client developer, helping them on a POC, multiple roles, right? Because a lot of the technology is new, and there is a need to, especially in this country, to really upskill and reskill in some of these new areas. So how much ever you do, I think it's not enough. That's where it is. Yeah, So what, from a startup perspective specifically, right? So we offer startups a program which is known as the IBM Global Entrepreneur Program, right? It's a global program where there are 3 levels into the program, so they can come in at a starter level, a builder level, or an advanced premium level. And each level gives them a certain amount of credits to begin with, right, on the IBM Cloud platform, where they can host their application, they can use the infrastructure as a service, they can also use the PaaS, right, which is a platform as a service. So they get access to, say, the cognitive AI APIs from Watson, they can use the IoT services, the blockchain services, pretty much use it to not just build their initial MVP, but when they really have a proper solution up and running, there are several startups who are still in the program and servicing active clients, right? So we really want to see, it's not just incubation where we're incubating and helping them develop a prototype, we are really helping them accelerate and grow. So the focus is more on, startups who've crossed that, initial experimentation stage, and they're really trying to accelerate from a market standpoint, even trying to differentiate their solution from a technology standpoint. From a technology focus area, if I were to pick technology as a category here, definitely AI is something which cuts across, right? Both whether I'm working with developers in a client or an enterprise customer, or if it's a partner, or even if it is a startup, what we are seeing more and more is AI is becoming a common denominator. Right, it's no more a niche area where you have some of those cool kids trying to do something different. Pretty much every application will have some level of AI capability built into it, right? Whether it is something as basic as natural language understanding or having a conversational interface, right? That AI capability is going to be very, very pervasive as we see. So that's a common, right? I would say. Common focus area across developer segments, across startups that we see. Specifically in other areas, we are seeing a lot of interest and real work coming up in areas like blockchain. Right, so initially there was a lot of need to educate and evangelize, right? What is blockchain? Figuring out what's the difference between a hyperledger and a Bitcoin at that basic level, right? But now I think we've crossed that education phase. Now it's all about doing, right? So we are working with quite a few startups and smaller partners in building out some blockchain-based solutions, right, for different use cases. And naturally we think of blockchain and primarily in the financial domain, yes, but we do see in other industries as well it being very relevant. We see use cases in retail, supply chain management, so on and so forth, that are very powerful for blockchain.
Very interesting.
Because as you rightly said, the startups have the technology, they have all the bright ideas, the bright engineers and everything, but they lack maybe the industry data, right? And when you look at the other side of the spectrum with the industry, from the large enterprise customers, they are sitting on huge piles of data, right, where it's all dark data. We don't know what to do with that data. So somewhere where we come in between, right, we literally act as a bridge, right? So where we may have a startup, right, who has something very, and very niche in a certain area, say like a fintech startup, right, who's doing something around some interesting use cases around payments, it could be KYC, so on and so forth, and they've infused it with some AI capability. Getting them to work with one of our large enterprise clients, right, is where it really, really becomes real, right? So, and then even for our own customers, right, not every solution or not every problem needs to be completely solved by IBM, right? We are more than happy to bring in the relevant ecosystem startups and the partners to help them build on top of that. So that's literally a bridge, right, where it moves from an incubation to an acceleration to a real go-to-market realization with an enterprise customer. So, and there are cases where you're differentiating yourself, right, in the coming years, standing out, right. One, I would say differentiate with your code first and foremost, right, because your code speaks for yourself. There is no dearth of opportunity to go ahead and either contribute code and imbibe code out there in the communities. If you're really looking at focusing on a particular space, right, I would say it's at the right time to pick up, again, depending on the domain you're in and which company, what organization, what are your requirements. There is a lot to gain by focusing on technologies like AI. AI is a broad area, right? But again, within AI, you could look at picking up some online courses around machine learning, deep learning. That is going to be a must-have skill, right? It's up to you how much you choose to grow in that space, whether you want to really go very deep, in terms of doing advanced AI. But at a basic AI level, understanding, the basic aspects of neural networks, training data models, so on and so forth, I believe it's going to be a must-have skill for pretty much everyone in the industry, right? And it may sound complex, but there is so much of help and material out there, right? It just needs a little bit of dedication and effort on one's part to go ahead and do that, right? The other emerging areas, and I would say the foundation of AI is data science, right? So in India, we are dealing with a lot of data, right? A lot of structured, unstructured. There's no dearth of data in this country, right? With us, with the companies, with the organizations, so on and so forth. So building data science skills, right? Even if not deep data science, building basic skills around being a data developer, right? Understanding and learning how to deal with data so that they in turn feed into your AI platform. That's going to be another area of focus. And then if you're really motivated, right, and if you really want to really go something deep, I would say blockchain is a very interesting space to focus on, and it's not very easy perhaps, right? So it requires some level of, it will require a little bit more education and effort on one's part to understand it, but that's again cutting across domains and industries to pick that up. IoT is a fun space, right? It's really fun, right? And I see a lot of the young developer advocates, even in my team, they get very excited with doing things with devices, right? And we are moving into a totally interconnected world, right? And learning how to connect devices to do interesting things will always be relevant again, right, in multiple domains. So these would be areas that everyone will have their own personal take and interest, but these are the hot topics.